Anger is a motivator. That's the big thing major news outlets and political content creators will use against you. They utilize your anger in order to motivate you. If you are not angry, they will make you angry. But this isn't about politics. Those are lame. We're talking about cartoons, specifically Velma. The evolution of Velma and the massive outbreak of hate that it has is honestly very sad. Not because the show is legitimately bad, but because it should never have met my eyeballs. However, you all fell for it. Anyone can see that this show is a bad idea. Even the people behind the show would know that it's a bad idea. And that's the whole point. They intentionally made it so different and degrading and annoying to make you mad. They took a beloved TV show that literally everyone has been exposed to, at least to some degree, and made a mockery of it. We are in a new era of television and movies where they do not care about making good shows. They care about making successful shows. Sure, a good show can be successful, or a bad show that upsets people enough to talk about it, to get curious, to go see it, to see how bad it is also successful. So why bother trying too hard on themes and character and narrative and setting and all these things that we know go into a good show when you can put in half as much effort specifically just to make people angry? It's a lot easier. Take the Snyder Cut, for example. Was the movie significantly better after making a 4-hour cut? Not really, and I should know, I watched both the original and the Snyder Cut. The fact that there was so much buzz around it meant it was bound to succeed. They didn't care what the outcome was, if it was good or bad. They just needed to make it, and they knew you and I would watch it. And now that's what we're seeing with Velma. And I intentionally didn't want to talk about the show because I don't believe in supporting bad shows. But there's so much buzz up around it, me keeping my silence isn't effective, and so I have to speak out against it. The idea of making Scooby-Doo into an adult show is actually a good idea. Add more mature themes, make the crimes that the mystery gang have to solve have more depth and more risk. It's a great idea. Problem is, we live in an era with Rick and Morty and BoJack Horseman and Big Mouth, where these are considered the staples of adult cartoons. And instead of making Velma more in a way that everyone else thought would be a good idea, they instead made it to where it's more like those shows, that of which are popular, so they can just guarantee the popularity of Velma. They molded it after what's already popular, that being shows that focus on crude humor, comedy, and talking about how it sucks to be an adult. Now, don't get me wrong, this formula is fantastic for shows like Rick and Morty and BoJack Horseman. They thrive in those formulas because they were designed for those formulas. Scooby-Doo was not designed for those formulas, and therefore it's really weird and wrong seeing Velma adapted to that formula. I'm sure you can make it work, but not without making major concessions to the characters of Scooby-Doo. And the writers figured that out and said, you know, how about we just scrap the characters entirely? And so they did. Now, Velma isn't really based on Scooby-Doo at all. It shares the same names as everyone in Scooby-Doo, but it's an entirely original show that just has Scooby-Doo characters in it. And now Velma has seen such massive success that we're basically guaranteed a second season. And there wasn't even any pushback in the studio when this idea was pitched because they knew it would be so successful. The problem with a lot of these shows is that they think if they just inject sex and violence into a show, it'll appeal to an older audience.
Have you ever noticed how pilot episodes of TV shows always have more gratuitous sex and nudity than the rest of the series? I, for one, think it's lame.
Now, that I can appreciate, tongue-in-cheek sort of humor that criticizes the industry. There's been a murder and Velma is a suspect, so now in order to help prove her innocence, she has to do the job that the police need to do and solve the mystery herself. More as a commentary to how useless the police can be. I mean, it's a neat idea for motivating the characters. So far, I'm not upset at this, but the fact they're trying to shove in political commentary in the show means it's going to be straddling a very fine line, so this can go well or very, very wrong.
You cheat off me in Spanish because you think I'm Mexican.
I have a disease where I can't recognize people who aren't hot.
And this is where it's starting to get annoying. Velma at least makes some sense. Daphne, I guess, also makes sense, but Fred is supposed to be a himbo. A nice guy that's actually nice, but now they threw his character away and made him entirely unlikable. Velma's mom disappeared when she left to go buy Christmas presents, and is now consumed by guilt that takes the shape of monsters.
Could exercising and eating less fried food help? We'll never know.
Now we have the uncomfortable conversation of why they changed the race of the characters and whether or not it was a good idea. Brought to you by a white guy that probably shouldn't be talking about this subject. You see, when it comes to situations like Ariel, that argument is stupid. The idea is that the race isn't connected to the character, so the role should go to whoever can play Ariel the best. Race isn't something that actor can change. But this is a cartoon. Race is something that's chosen. And sure, Daphne being Asian and Velma being a person of color doesn't change much of their character. Shaggy is where it gets weird, and there's not a lot of solid explanations as to why it's weird other than the fact that it doesn't aid his character. Sure, we're willing to see where it goes, given that they're doing political commentary. It makes sense that they need a black character to comment on whatever they need to for that. And if done well, I'm sure people would have been more receptive to the change of Shaggy's race, but we circle back to them changing the characters beyond just the race, and the fact that it really wasn't necessary at all since race is chosen in a cartoon, it's just like, why?
Exactly. I think it has something to do with drugs, which I hate.
The biggest change is that Shaggy is a straight edge, and that's the joke. He's not Shaggy now, that's the whole joke. Also, everything about Velma wanting to solve her mom's disappearance is a lie. She didn't go lost. She left them because they were jerks, throwing the character's likability even further in the gutter.
You know what 420 is, right?
Yeah, it's code for adults who still watch cartoons.
Okay, we got 2 jokes that I thought were actually funny. 1 per episode so far. Not great.
And that's the 411 home skillet. Words.
And we're back to hating the show again. One of the positives about this show is that it ends up getting weird enough that I can't even see it as a parody of Scooby-Doo. It's so much of a strange departure from the source material, this is feeling like its own show. Its focus on being high school, dealing drugs, and Velma's overly judgmental attitude, assuming that everything can be boiled down to the fault of rich white jerkwads, starts getting old fast. I mean, I get it. Rich white jerkwads are a problem, but they harp on it so much, they make it seem like it's the only problem with everything.
Wait, am I enjoying hanging out with you again?
I don't know. Maybe I'm not the shallow monster you think I've become. Maybe you judge people so harshly because it's easier to feel right from afar than risk getting close and being wrong.
Well, at least they address it. That's something I always did appreciate about modern adult cartoons, them addressing deeper psychological or societal issues, but it usually goes over people's heads because these shows also appeal to the lowest common denominator, as well as people who can actually use their brain. Like the Pickle Rick episode being the episode where it explains Rick avoiding all his issues, and now he's actually a failure at every level. But people only care about Pickle Rick, haha funny. So much of this show doesn't revolve around the mystery, which is probably the most upsetting part. It has a lot of drama in between the mystery. Daphne and Velma being old friends that hate each other and are probably attracted to each other and struggles to come to terms with that. Shaggy being a loser who wants Velma's attention, but she's into Daphne. Fred being convicted of murder and is also more of a loser. It's a lot, which is why it doesn't feel like it's based off Scooby-Doo. This is just what would happen if internet weirdos got a hold of the show. It feels chronically online. Also, they never call Shaggy Shaggy, they always call him Norville, but I'm guessing the majority of you haven't actually seen this show and have just seen people dunking on it, so I'm going to continue saying Shaggy for the sake of convenience for everyone who hasn't actually consumed this show. But the thing I hate most about this show is that I actually started to like it the more I watched it. It's probably because I'm definitely the target audience for this show, and the humor appeals heavily to people on the left politically, even though I know this is going to be the extreme, but it's also self-aware of how bad conveying to a single political spectrum is. While appealing to its political spectrum, it allows its opportunity to point out the faults and issues of that political spectrum. The show focuses primarily on the issue of shutting out the world and judging it from afar, like people do on the internet, where they just hear about bad things and then get angry about it, and they never bother interacting with the people they judge, and how when you actually talk to the people you judge, you start to gain a deeper understanding of them and maybe realize you were wrong, and listening to strangers on the internet isn't the best method to learn about people who are other than you. And I'm talking everyone, including you. Including us.
But you can't just imprison a totally innocent person.
What don't you get about cops?
Here's where it starts to fail. It eventually starts trying to break down how women are expected to dress and look in a way that's appealing to men, makeup, outfits, etc. And Velma is told to make them not hot. But the problem is, they don't wear makeup or dress nice for guys. People do that because it makes them feel good. Sure, you can wear this stuff to appeal to another person, but that's not the only reason. I wear makeup in order to express myself. And because if I don't, the lighting in a camera will make it to where my skin is so reflective it's disgusting, and so matte foundation really helps cut that down. But I wear it because it makes me feel good, not because it makes others feel good about me. Sure, I like it when people validate how attractive I am, but that's not the goal.
Oh, what the hell, girls?
This wasn't an exercise in deprogramming. It's an exercise in slut-shaming. No woman should ever have to change who she is or how she dresses to not be murdered.
Okay. Never mind, I guess. Is this show kind of actually good? Wait, no. This show isn't chronically online. Velma is chronically online. And this whole show is to break down people who are like her. Wow. It didn't need to be ruining Scooby-Doo in order to do this, though. This show could have been good if it wasn't crapping on Scooby-Doo. If they made it to where all the names were incredibly similar but legally distinct and had it use Scooby-Doo as a jumping off point instead of making it an official iteration of Scooby-Doo, I feel like people would actually probably like this show, but they didn't do that. So, they deserve all the hate.
I should spend less time with you.
But I only see you when I need you as is.
Until Norval learns to stand up for himself, he's gonna do exactly as I say.
I can't tell if this is healthy or toxic. Depends on if Gigi's supporting him or controlling him. It's hard to tell. What I can't get over is that the show does have pretty good one-liners.
Well, I tried, but only got halfway there. That's just me living up to my label as a male feminist.
This show has problems. Or at least if you can separate it from the source material of Scooby-Doo, you might actually enjoy it, like I was starting to. But if you can't, it's going to piss you off. This isn't Scooby-Doo. There is enough to enjoy about this show, but also jumping on the hate wagon is also really fun. So it's up to you. If you actually kind of like this show, hey, I see you, that's valid. If you don't care and just want to hate on this show with everyone else, that is also very valid. I think if this show gets a second season, it's bound to fail. The reason this show is so successful is because so many people had fun hating it. That sort of situation is hard to replicate for the same show a second time. We will see this again. I have no doubt that one of our beloved childhood shows will be ruined for the sake of making us angry for monetary gain. And the problem is we only have ourselves to blame. We are responsible for this show's success. If we didn't want it to succeed, we should have let it fade into obscurity. If you had let it die, then it would have died. But your hate kept it thriving. I should use that line in D&D, that's good. And we only confirmed to everyone that this BS works, and they will do it again. I hope we are all ashamed of ourselves. We are all hypocrites, including myself. And the cynical way that I'm talking is also the tone of this entire show. It's very infectious, and you should not binge this show. I hope you all enjoyed this video, because I sure didn't. Subscribe and follow me on my socials. I also have a Patreon if you want to see my videos in advance and get stickers. Stay beautiful, and keep playing.